Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to our podcast, Emotional Sobriety. Glad to have you back, Alan. I've missed you. Patrick and I have both missed you the last couple of weeks, and we've tried to carry on as best we can. But like I texted you guys earlier, good to have the band back together.
Yes, I'm excited to be back, and you guys carried on well. We've gotten some great feedback from the shows that you did, and I'm so glad to be back. It's been an exhausting journey the last few weeks here, and we're starting to get settled here in beautiful Doylestown, Pennsylvania. So I wanted to say on the show, coming to you live from Doylestown, Pennsylvania.
Doylestown sounds so bucolic.
That's the coolest thing about being up in that area. It is like things, I think things are old down here, but I mean, things are, it's like, it's amazing.
I mean, in this area that I'm living in is where George Washington had his army.
Wow.
The Continental Army was formed, with men and from this area, and they camped in this area. They crossed the Delaware, not close from where I'm at. I mean, the history around here is, and you feel it, you see it. When I drive down these roads and when you guys come and visit, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The homes are literally built on top of the road. Because I guess when the carriage came back, they just pulled up and then handed the milk off to the side and put it on your porch and then drove down the street. Right. I mean, it's so different. You just see that this community just has unbelievable roots.
Yeah.
You don't get that in Los Angeles. It's the big thing that for me was missing is the incredible history that our country has. And you don't just get that in LA. You get a lot of concrete, you get a lot of freeways, you get a lot of driving time. I mean, there's wonderful things about LA. I love it. I love it for what it is.
Well, it's time for something different, man.
This is different. This is different, and I wanted to throw out a topic because I can use a heavy dose of this right now, and that's, being able to roll with the punches and flexibility.
Flexibility, absolutely.
And, I'll start with a story in that's quite upsetting. So I think, I mentioned to you as we were moving out here that one of the things that we were cautious of doing was flying Rocky, our beautiful white, golden retriever. We didn't want to fly him in a plane because of the heat conditions and stuff like that. So we were told, you might consider one of these transportation companies that pack up your animals, drive them across the states, and deliver them after a couple days of transport. So Jess researched it. We thought we had a premium company. We paid $3,000. His ticket was more than our tickets to get out here, And so he shows up Monday this last week, Tom and Patrick, and it was horrible. He was near death.
Oh my God.
It was I can feel the tears inside my chest as I talk. I mean, we love him. He's a member of the family. You know how that goes.
I do know. Yeah.
And I think, and they're being very, very closed in terms of providing us any real information about what happened. They said he was nervous and that he didn't eat, but he was also incredibly dehydrated. And an animal is not going to not drink water if they're nervous. They're going to drink water.
Yeah.
So he probably had very few fluids in the 3 days. They said that he was being taken out of his cage and walked, every few hours on the way out. He was left in his cage for 3 days in his container. And he was laying in urine for 3 days. His urine. So his urine because of the acidity, ate away the skin on his whole underside of his body. He's
Yeah.
got wounds. You wouldn't believe it. It looks like somebody took a hatchet to him, the way he's been cut up. He developed pancreatitis. I mean, he's in bad shape. He's now had to spend 3 days, one night overnight in the vet getting IV fluids on antibiotics, pain medication, and he's finally coming back to life. I mean, talk about, I mean, we're furious with this guy. We call him up and says, well, your dog's old, isn't it? I said, no, he's 4.5 years old. He's not old. So I'm trying to put it off like somehow it's the dog. So
Mm-hmm.
this has been one of those things. It's like there's been many things with this move that did not happen the way, quote, we were hoping they were going to happen. And so we've had to modify our things. We've had to be, to take care of Rocky, which we've been glad to nurse him back into health. But this is that thing about, we can make plans, but you can't plan the results. And this is
No.
the results. And, Jess wanted to first turn this all on her. What did I do? Why did I pick this company? But she did her as much due diligence as you can do, other than maybe calling previous owners or something like that had their dog transported.
Do you think that revenge has a place in emotional sobriety? Because I'm sure you're thinking lawsuits.
We're definitely going to ask him to make us whole. I mean, we disputed charges, the last payment, which was over $2,100 on the credit card. We disputed that. But, the vet is really taking this up and is very upset, and understandably so. Trust me, if you saw the dog, you would say this is abuse. This is abuse. So the vets have taken copious pictures. There's a report written up, and they've reported this company to the authorities in California, Department of Consumer Affairs. So
we're going to have to talk. We'll talk about what the definition of revenge is, but I don't think. I mean, maybe there's different ways of looking at that, but calling for accountability in something like this and being upset I don't think is necessarily vengeful. It's like,
this is one of those things where there's nothing wrong with us being upset about this. This is appropriate.
Well, what I was going to say when you said it was an example of things going not the way you hoped, but in this particular case, because you're dealing with a professional company, this is and again, we talk about expectations all the time, but we live in a real world, and the truth is, you make a bargain with these people with expectations. Those are just like somebody comes to us, there are certain, I won't ever claim I'm going to fix them, but I will claim that I'm going to do the very best I can. And by the way, first of all, I will do no harm. And this is wow, that's it. It's
a mind blower. And like you said, and you bring up a good point, Patrick, in terms of, and even this thing, when we talk about that, it's a spiritual axiom, like when Bill Wilson is talking about step 10, and he says it's spiritual axiom, every time we're disturbed, there's something wrong with us. Well, I think in this case, there's nothing wrong with us being disturbed. This is an appropriate reaction to a situation. And like you said, Tom, there was an agreement here. There was a mutual understanding that I'm paying for a service, and I expect the service to be delivered in the way these guys promised. Now, there was other things that happened in a move, like they're going to. The movers were supposed to bring our furniture in on a Saturday. They didn't get here till Sunday, which is why I had to cancel last week, right? They hoped that they could pull the trailer up into our house and unload the semi. Well, once he got here and saw that there's this asphalt driveway coming back, he says, first of all, I can't get up that driveway. I'm going to bottom out. And if I did, I'd ruin your driveway.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's an 80,000 pounds a truck, and stuff like that. It's the asphalt's not made to handle that kind of weight and stuff like that. So they had to shuttle things in. So those have been some of the challenges, right? In terms of being able to say, look, that stuff is out of our control, in terms of the movers getting here. So how do we roll with the punches? I was hoping to do the podcast the next day, and because they had to shuttle back and forth, the shuttle was taking a lot longer than they thought. They didn't finish the move, Tom, until Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And they started Sunday morning early. So it was 3 full days to move us in. And look, I became very close to them. They were a great group. It was Ben's truck, and he worked for Atlas Van Lines, and he had his 2 nephews with him and his sister-in-law. So it was a family operation, and they became part of our family before they
Absolutely.
They took showers here before they headed off to Texas to do their next move.
Wow.
I mean, we became that close. And look, hats off to these guys. They worked literally 12-hour days, and I'm talking worked. There was no, sitting around and shooting and, shooting the shit. I mean, these guys are busting balls. But, I was so aware, though, about this thing we talk about in emotional sobriety, that it's so important to let the situation you're in control you. And not get hung up. Like when Rocky showed up in the shape he was in, everything else got put on hold. And it was 9/11. We got to get him cared for. We got to take care of him. And that's what we did. When the moving company switched gears and we only had one bed to sleep in here at the house, we camped out and we made it fun. That was one of the things that was rolling with the punches. We turned it into a fun little moment. We had one bed and a flashlight and pillows, and we slept at the house with nothing else in the house. And it was wonderful. Our suitcases from where we slept.
Well, a memory that all of you will have forever. It's absolutely. Well, but I want to go back for a second to what you said. When Bill says there's something wrong with your expectations. It's like, I think, and I don't know Bill, but I don't think that, I can't imagine he would disagree with some of this in the idea that I think the thing is, and it's a language that I've used a long time. I think we both think in these terms is it's the first place you look is your side of the street, is the way I say it. Is that you always check that out to be sure that because if there is something there that is about me, then I need to be able to find it. And that's the place to start. It doesn't mean that the other people are not at fault or don't have other problems with that. But the idea, there are times where we're going to do a check. And by the way, the reason you're not finding stuff that is yours to work on, if you had reacted, we can imagine different ways that any one of the three of us would react. I mean, just impulsively react to something like that. And we'd go like, oh yeah, I could find some places where I could have screwed that up for myself. It wouldn't make it right for the other people, but it's like in those cases, it would be mine to start there. But the idea hopefully what's happening and what we're teaching people too, we're practicing and teaching is the idea, if you're walking this path, it's not, emotional sobriety is not something we're going toward. It's something that runs right down the center of us. Yeah. It's always there. This is the way I've always thought about being at peace. We're never, we're human beings. So we're not going to land right on it all the time. We're going to live closer and closer to that center. And the cool part about that is you went through this with Rocky, you check back and you'll do it again. You'll take a look and see if there's something else that you need. If there's something to learn, you'll learn it. But ultimately, it's okay if you check in there and one of the ways we do that is we check it out with other people, like you're doing right now. Yeah. It's like you check it out with trustworthy people. So you have people who go like, well, wait a minute, maybe you ought to think about so and so. It's we don't isolate with it. But it's okay if you run the checklist, like Kathy, the pilot, was when she was doing her checklist thing, like she did like a pilot. It's like you do a checklist and you check out. You go like, this is okay. Yeah. It's and the other piece is, I'm sorry, we're talking about hurting an animal, and it's like, that's I disclaim any. I have total bias about this, so it's like I don't know that I can be objective about such a thing.
In one sense, I was glad I was in Pennsylvania and that I could make a phone call and not make a visit.
Yeah, yeah, right. Because I don't want to bail you out. It's like that's a personal thing for me. I just don't want to spend the money.
That's it. The other thing that comes up with this, and I guess it's an interesting piece of this. It's also about making decisions, isn't it? like I was telling you, when just, after this happened and then she's starting to question her decision because of the results, I'm just reminded what I've said so many times is rarely can we know the results of a decision we make.
Yeah.
We can hope for a certain thing or have a certain kind of expectation
Or
about,
in this case, have a realistic expectation.
well,
Absolutely.
based
Yeah.
on promises, right? He says these are our services. This is how we're going to deliver them, and and so it's easy to do that. But then what I saw her doing when she was questioning herself, what did I do wrong? That it was something about me. And I was reminded of that comment you made about negative arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
And the negative arrogance is like, if this went wrong, it must be related to something I did.
I have a client who actually has recently identified very, very specifically that that's a message that she carries from her childhood, that if something's gone wrong, then something's wrong with me. I've done something, or even I'm just even sometimes just existentially there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
It's like, and so and of course at times of stress, we talk about it's going to rhyme. I like things that rhyme. Time with stress, like Jess, you fall back into that stuff. That's why we have to have each other. That's why it's good to be partners in marriage. In that case, so there's somebody there. As she starts to slip off that cliff, you put your hand out and catch her, and say, no, you stay up here with me. We're not going down there.
And that's where partnering comes in, because you're right on with that. And thank God that it's so interesting. I of course was very, very supportive with her on that. And then 2 days later, Cece's running out on the new deck because the deck is not finished yet, right? We're going to put
right.
He gets a splinter, and I was all in Jess's. How come you didn't have shoes on?
Oh, good. That's good. That's right.
Like,
well, we wouldn't want to start a rumor that you're perfect. I mean, come on.
Because when it comes to Cece crying, and if I'm going to blame somebody for it.
All right. Well, Patrick, you and I need to make a note that that's something we need to be working on with this man.
Right.
It's like,
I was going to say, Alan helped me get sober in an instrumental, very direct, meaningful way. And you've always encouraged me to not be afraid to make a decision. Recovery to you has never, or at least as you've demonstrated it to me, has not meant, just kind of a holding back and like a refusal to really get in the shit because it might be too stressful or knock you off kilter. And I think, that's kind of like what you're talking about in the context of, did I do the wrong thing? Did I make the right call? Well, you had to make a call. So what's it going to be, right?
No,
absolutely.
You're right on. And
that's beautiful.
That is, see, I brought that up just because, see, I think that we can fall out of the two sides of that bed, as you pointed out a lot of times, Tom, is that we can fall out on a side of the bed. It's all about me in an arrogant sense, right? In that positive arrogance, if we want to call it. But we can also make it about us in that negative arrogance. And they're both deadly. I mean, they're both deadly. And when you said emotional sobriety is like kind of being right down that middle, it really is. It's about finding balance in all of this stuff. We talking today, we got a ton of stuff to do. And Jess and I just looked at each other and says, you know what? Day off.
Beautiful.
Day off. If we feel like opening a box, we'll open it. If there's no pressure, let's take Sunday off. And we just said, instead of driving ourselves, we got to get this done. There's no got to get anything done. There is no ultimate arrival. Somebody said that one time when I said that the old line of life's a journey, not a destination. She said to me, she said it, and it just really hit me directly. She said, "Does that mean we never get to arrive anywhere?" And I thought,
Absolutely, that sucks. So I've decided it's a journey with multiple and many destinations, and you guys, and quite literally, and not to mention, I'm sure we could do metaphors all over the place, but quite literally, you all have arrived in Pennsylvania, in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and you're in your home, and it's like, yes, take the day off. I love that.
That's right. That's what we've done, and we've been enjoying it. I've had a nap, and she's just had her nap.
Mhm.
So we've done that, and we were hoping Cece would have a nap, but she's decided that
Well, you got to check those expectations.
that's right. She's on her own. She's on her own schedule here. This little thing. It's wonderful.
Oh my
Do you
goodness.
think Bill Wilson meant it literally when he said, that if you're disturbed, that there's something wrong with you? I don't think it was literal, was it?
Hey, I look. Sometimes he would state things in absolutes, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And I understand his reasoning for it. I think it was more coming from kind of a teaching place, right?
Yeah.
I will take this heuristic kind of stance about an issue to make a point that most people, and we can all relate to this, if something goes wrong, we're looking for someone to blame, either ourselves or someone else.
Mhm,
That's an automatic response when you're emotionally immature, which I
mhm.
can say I still am.
Which we come in, that's where the whole sinner thing comes from, which we come and go from. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not, because a lot of times what happens is people beat themselves up because they act out of a way that they may have done regularly or frequently in the past, or solely in the past. But it's like, because I fall into that does not mean I can't, it doesn't mean I've lost what I've gained. I get back up, you brush yourself off, and you go right
Right.
into. And I want to say too, that because I appreciate that question about wondering about Bill's intent with that, because I've been, and I've talked about this probably in the podcast before. It's like speaking what I call speaking with authority. This is one of the things I've learned from witnessing you talk. Is like, ultimately, where I come from is a place where I had an editor say to me one time, says, Tom, if we let you go the way you want to go, as far as personalizing this stuff, you're going to have a disclaimer between every sentence. Every other sentence is going to be, the following sentence may not apply to you. And he made that point very clear, that it's like, you can't do that. You are to write this stuff. You have to, there has to be generalization, and you have to make those things. And I think a lot of times when and a lot of times the people, certainly I can explain for myself, there's the times in my life where I didn't need anybody to say to me or write something that I was going to read that was going to give me any leeway. I needed somebody to say, no, this is the way this is. You go find out how you do it that way. It's like, later, with our own wisdom, which comes with this, we can understand, you learn, it's the old deal. You learn the rules before you break the rules.
Yes.
Again, we learn that as writers. It's like, when we're all three writers, it's like, you learn the rules, and then you do what the hell you want to with them. You punctuate any way you damn well feel like it. But those of us who do a decent job with that actually know how to write first.
Yes.
And it's like, I think this applies to that. So
you got to know the rules to break the rules, and
Mhm.
and that's understandable.
Yeah.
And I think that's right. I mean, I see that, and I do see what he was doing right with this, is that,
Mhm.
so let me go back and share this thing, like with Cece, when I got angry with
Mhm.
Jess
Mhm.
because Cece got a couple splinters in her foot.
Mhm.
Now, understand, it was a couple splinters in her foot.
I get
It's all it was.
that wasn't
to
lost on me.
amputate.
That wasn't lost on me at all, Alan.
It was lost on me. Trust me. It was like the poor thing had to have her foot removed. As we're holding her down to take these things out, and she's screaming bloody murder.
Surgery. We're gonna have
Oh,
surgery.
Yeah, Civil War style. Yeah.
that's right, Civil War style.
Well,
It was Civil War. We're back in the country. We're part of the war. Was
Bite on this, dear.
that's right.
I didn't think of that. Next time I'll give her.
Oh my God, Patrick, that's hilarious.
Patrick, that was great. Well, Jess says, what is going on for you that you get this upset and this angry? And then I had to stop and think, well, wow, what is it that this touches? And then it started this kind of going through the layers. Well, the first layer is,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's my job to protect my family. As a man, that's part of my role, is to
Mm-hmm.
protect, and I failed here.
Yep.
Then it went to, my God, it touched some of the pain that I have when I see somebody I love hurting, and
Mm-hmm.
there's not much I can do to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Like with
Yep.
my dad when he had cancer. So it went way back to that. So as I started to process what was going on that made me so disturbed, I'm not going to say I was wrong about it. I could just start to understand the depth to my reaction.
Well,
And
you went immediately to helplessness, is what you just told us. It's
exactly,
like that's the thing, and that's not a conscious thing. Now, the conscious stuff is when you have a marriage like you and Jess have, and we're so hopefully we can ask ourselves that question too, and we do that frequently. Well, hey, what the hell? What am I reacting? But in that case, she got to the question before you, which
yeah,
which Dee Dee does very often for me. What the hell is a beautiful question to be asked in a situation like that, because it activates the part, a curious part of you that begins the process, and then you go through those layers, and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I wasn't reacting to splinters, I was reacting to my own helplessness.
that's right. To
Yeah.
my helplessness, to my trauma in terms of the stuff that I experienced with my dad, and which was related to my helplessness when I was laying next to him and he's screaming.
Well,
Uh,
helplessness is specifically about people that you love being in pain and you not being able to do anything about it.
and that's right. And definitely connected to that in me. And I think, see, that's, I think, what Bill was hoping that he could invite people, is to getting more curious with themselves. You know, more and more, Tom, in our discussions, curiosity is emerging as a very important element of
Mhm.
emotional sobriety.
Yeah,
It really is.
curiosity is the primary ingredient in respect, is what I think.
It
It's
is.
like it, and that's toward ourselves as well as to other people. A lot of times we're pretty good at that, doing for other people, but what we don't do is, when we're judgmental of ourselves, we don't afford ourselves this, that kind of respect and that kind of curiosity. Let's have that interview inside our head that we would do with somebody else. Well, tell me about it.
Right.
What's going on? And that's what gets you down through those layers.
Yes, exactly. And see, and I think that's really what his call was to, Patrick, is
Mhm.
really inviting people to be more introspective rather than either externalize or internalize. I think that there's a difference when you're introspective and internalizing the problem, right? And making it that, look at what's wrong with me or what's
Mhm.
wrong with you. The introspection says, what is happening here?
That'll
What is,
get you further. Yeah.
yeah. How can I understand this so
Mhm.
that I can now get some handle on what's going on in a different way instead of being so reactive?
Well, think of it as a continuum. It's okay. One end of the continuum is all of us have probably been there at some point, is taking no responsibility whatsoever.
Yeah.
Okay. The other end of the continuum is taking all the responsibility. Whatever. If we're talking to people who do not know about taking responsibility, who basically, and that's victim thinking, which we're taught in our culture. It's like things happen how I'm doing is determined by what happens to me, not how I respond. That's the piece we're switching around for people. Is so Bill's statement. If he's talking to somebody who's toward this end of the continuum, which if he's talking to newly recovering alcoholics, it's a pretty good guess that you're talking to people who've not been taking responsibility for themselves. So he makes a statement that's at the far end of the continuum, and you think about the balance. It's like, what's that going to do? Well, that's going to push the scale a little bit. It's because you need it. For one thing, it gets people's attention.
Yeah. Well,
Even the extreme part of it. It's like, okay, well, that wakes me up, makes me look at what we're doing. It makes us think about it.
yeah, no, I was just, it was on my mind because I was talking to a friend, stayed with me this weekend, who was also in the program. And we were just talking about the big book, and, that there is kind of, you encounter an orthodoxy sometimes that's where, I like to think of this book as a living thing, and you kind of interpret it. And, I like what you said about like, you know, you learn the rules first, then you disco
Mm-hmm.
after you learn the rules. And I was just, you know, kind of prodding at that a little bit.
No, and
No, but see, I think the question is good because I think it's one of the things that we all are responsible for being able to think it through. It's, I mean, again, because what you're saying is if we're, you know, if we're going to do just literal interpretation, you know, like some people do, in my opinion, in religious stuff, it's like, oh, well, this says that, you know, I don't want to be that guy with the big book. I love, you know, I love what has been written in the literature, but it's like it's written by human beings. It's you know, it's like, and yeah, it's been edited, and it's just it's words, and our job is to take it and use it.
that's right. That's right. And you know, I do think that there's something to be said. You know, I love what the discussion we've had in that Thursday night emotional sobriety meeting
Mm-hmm.
when we were talking about character, quote, defects,
Mm-hmm.
and how unintentionally some of the labels that we use to describe some of the issues we need to work on can be shaming in themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And make it hard for people to look at these things and to own them. And, you know, like, you know, when we talk about, well, was there something really wrong with me? Well, you could say, well, it would be wrong blaming Jess for what happened with Cece, but then that takes away Jess's responsibility to know this guy's being a real idiot. I don't need to take what he's saying personally, which she was able to in that case. She didn't take it personally. Which
Well, right. Well, she has a lot of practice.
Well, she has a lot. I help her keep that.
Aren't you sweet?
I am. What is that thing that piece of metal that you, or the grinding stone that? Trust me, I give her plenty of opportunity to get that blade sharp. But what I was going to say is, see, I think that if we were talking to Bill today and we suggested to him and said, look, maybe instead of saying there's something wrong with us when we're disturbed, that we could say that we are giving a certain meaning to it, and that it would be a good idea to explore that meaning. You see, that's more of a neutral kind of statement that invites somebody to look into what's going on with them, that without having to deal with the ego issue of wrong, right? That kind of thing about being wrong. I don't know. Was I wrong? I was reactive. You know, it had meaning to me. Was I helpful in that situation? Probably not as much as I could have been. I was holding Cece down and cooperating that way, and hating Jess every minute of it. But I mean, but you see what I'm saying is that when we step back, even like that discussion about character defects, when I believe Glenn suggested character defaults.
No, now somebody else took credit for that. We need to stop giving that, because I knew it wasn't him. We need to stop giving Glenn credit for that.
Well, didn't Glenn say when he came back and say that I've said that?
Well, no, he just came back and he cleverly said, "I'm still taking credit for it, even though we had assigned it." So it's like, no, I'm glad that woman spoke up.
I know that was important, but for her, but see, that had meaning to her, right? Of course, but see, whoever said it, it neutralized it. You see what I mean? We're saying that, my God, let's look at our reactions. Let's cultivate an atmosphere of curiosity. If I'm inflexible, which was the you know, talking about today, is this the ability to roll with punches, because rarely are things going to turn out the way that we'd like them to, or let me put it this way: we know for certain they won't turn out the way we want them to all the time.
Right.
Not going to do that. We just know that. Maybe some days you're going to have a little more luck than another day, and things are going to go your way. But don't get confused and think that's the way it's going to go all the time.
Right.
Right. That's the thing we're saying. So be prepared to now respond and roll with the punches and figure out what is the next indicated step. Had this thing happen with Rocky and we got all into the injustice of it and got too focused on that and not on taking care of Rocky,
right,
that would have been a crime, right? We would have added to the problem. We made our priority. This dog needs help. We're getting him help. Didn't matter how much money we had to spend. We're not getting into that. It's like, we're taking care of this. This is number one priority. Instead of getting into what's he going to do? Is he going to pay us back for this? This is not right? All that other nonsense that was irrelevant at the time. Our focus was on caring. But that same thing in that situation, I think a lot of us in a 911 triage appropriately, right? We figured this is number one priority.
It's a value system thing. See, I mean, the idea is the truth is, that other stuff is that's a very unconscious thing for both you and Jess in terms of that. You're not making a conscious decision. Do I want to write a stern letter of disapproval right now, or do I want to take my dog to the vet? It's like, I mean, it's like it's reflex. Yeah.
But see, in situations that don't demand as much from us.
Yeah. Yes.
It's so important to apply the same thinking. That's why when we talk about pausing, wait a minute, before you send that letter, write these things out. I went through that whole situation recently with a publisher, and I had all these ideas, and I wrote them out, and I sent them to you and to a few other people to get feedback on, because I wanted to be thoughtful. I just didn't want to get impulsive and say things and take stances and do things that weren't well thought out. And so this is where living in that space between the stimulus and our reaction becomes so darn important, because that gives us a chance to let the best in us decide what to do. Not the reactive part of us, not the victim part of us, not the how dare you part of us, the part that is able to get aligned with reality and to be able to cope with that situation in the best way possible.
Right. Okay. Two things I want to be sure and point out. One of them, just to leave things in a nice gray area where I think some ways they need to be. One of the things when we talk about, when you imagine the conversation with Bill and kind of making an editing suggestion, that kind of stuff, is one of the things that I know is that it was extremely important to me in my process of getting better, and I mean better by being described as becoming the adult who's responsible for myself, which is what I think what this is all about. It's like, it was really important. The language of being able to let myself be wrong was important. It was, because I was already a master at couching things in I could do an essay presentation on anything and talk my way. I could talk my way through most things. Well, until I met my wife, and thank goodness for that, because she was not available to listen to that stuff. But so it was important to me to realize when I say, I was being confronted with this. One of the things I say is I remember the day that Dee Dee was confronting me with some stuff that was really hard. It was about her pain, about my causing it, and my being responsible. She was upset about something legitimately. And I had to and I realized that I had done that. I was guilty of that. And it's like, and the fact that I neither crumbled, which went into the pitiful me, look, I'm so sorry, I hurt you, that kind of stuff, or defended, pushing back. And one of the things that when I'm telling that story with the clients, I'll tell them, I don't remember every detail of that moment in time, but I can tell you this: I'm pretty sure that every single thing she said, I did not agree with. Okay. So there was stuff I could grab a hold of and nitpick. I could go, well, that part's not true, but that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that I accepted my legitimate guilt. I was wrong. I had done something that hurt, that created harm. Talk about hurting somebody I love was hurt, and I did it, and it's like, it was, and it's like, I needed to do that. So I think there is a place for that language, I guess, is my general point about that. And then the other thing is just,
I think the other way to talk about it, Tom, and I think at that point in time, there is a moment where when we admit we're wrong, it's not taking something away from us, right? Which right. Say, if I admit I'm wrong, I'm no longer that perfect self I'm supposed to be for you to love me. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's a real reluctance or resistance to doing that. what you did was an example of what happens in recovery, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
you said, my God, when I own this, I'm actually adding to who I am. I'm not subtracting. This
Right.
is
You don't. Right.
issue.
You don't feel that in the moment. One of the things I always want people to know, you don't feel that in the moment because the idea, I had thought about that when I was saying that. I mean, if the time traveler could come back and tell me that there was going to be a time when being able to own that and stuff like that was going to actually be a part of my self-esteem,
Yes.
I would have thought, what the fuck are you talking about? Because that's not the case, because it didn't feel good. But the truth is, I mean, one of the things that I feel best about in myself is that, first of all, because it makes life easier, is to know that if I screw something up, I'm not saying I'm not going to have problems with it, and you guys will have to call me out on it sometime. But it's like, generally speaking, that's kind of a strong suit of mine. I don't have problems admitting when I mess something up. It's like it may take me a minute, it may take me a couple of days even to look through, but I can do that. And it's like, yeah, it is part of your growth. And and I just want to say this too, because one of the things that I'm writing on for our book, our emotional sobriety book, is you made me remember this. Is like this terminology I've used before we got to this character default thing was, I would say that rather than character defects, I would always say to my clients, let's think of them as characteristics, and realize that every characteristic you have has an upside and a downside. I consider myself a lazy man, and I don't think that's a negative thing. Some people think that's negative. It's but it's like, what's the upside of that? Well, the upside of that is, if you want to take a vacation, if you want to go out in the woods with me back here and kick back, I'm the guy. It's like, I'm not some OCD guy you're gonna take. I'm gonna drive you crazy while you're out there. I'm really good at that. The downside of that is massive procrastination, all this other stuff that I continue to deal with. But so it really is just evaluating. And this is what you're saying, Alan. It's like, let's go, it's that curiosity again. Let's just go learn more about ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's the call that you and I have. And I do want people to get to the point where they can own when they're wrong. I think it's an important thing to do, right? But I want people to be able to do that and see it in the service of helping you become what you can be. Right. See, that's the way I like to think of this thing. So it's
that's what you said about it's not lose, because I think that's, we have to move beyond. We can't just switch it, but we have to move beyond seeing that as losing. That's what you said. We're not. Oh, I lost that argument. It's like, you're missing the point.
My girlfriend and I, we rewatched The Sopranos recently, which is fantastic. And there's this great critical compendium of essays about each episode that I had next to me while I was rewatching it. And the kind of thesis of the show, I think, is it's kind of a deeply cynical view of human nature, is that people can change, but most don't want to. And that there's a duel going on inside every character between their kind of like animal self-centered programming and then they're better angels. And then the way the critic wrote about it is the better angels in that show have glass jaws. And I look at kind of the work you guys are doing, and I mean, emotional sobriety, or the seeking of emotional sobriety, is kind of about strengthening that jaw, right? So that the best, like you were saying, the best in us can call the shots, and we're not in this kind of like free for all the time with our
well, let me ask you this, just on a writing perspective, is the phrase "better angels with glass jaws," was that the writer's phrasing?
That was not. I can't take credit
yours?
For that. No, that's Matt Zoller Seitz.
Okay. Because I was going to say, if you came up with that, I was going to say, write that down, because that's beautiful.
I loved it. It was a great turn of phrase. But the better angels is, that's the pause that you were saying between a reaction and then the way that you answer that through your own action.
Yes. We're on a path of learning.
That's it. That's what this is all about. And look, it's great to be back with you guys. Have the band back together again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great
This
episode.
is this has felt like coming home. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're back, and I'm
So-
so sorry about Rocky, and I hope he gets much
Well,
better
I'll tell you,
quickly.
he was barking a minute ago, so that's a good
Good.
sign. And he's much better now. I mean, he's come home and he's mostly back, except for the bone hanging out of his leg where the skin just ate through. I mean, they had to staple several areas of his skin together because it was so messed up. I mean, it really was criminal.
Mm.
So Rock's on his way. We're here now, and he's going to have a gas in that backyard. I sent you guys a few photos earlier. This backyard goes on for 2 acres. I mean, there's 2 acres of land behind me, which is just beautiful. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I wake up in the morning and here comes a deer with her foal.
Yeah.
Into the backyard, and they're having their breakfast as we're
Yes.
I mean, that's like, wow, that's wonderful to be able to experience.
Beautiful.
The city is in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say that I think it's absolutely right that you didn't take a punitive point of view when your dog showed up like that. And the first thing you went to was, let's just take care of him. Let's get him better. I mean, I just think that as a framework to apply to.
It was just the right thing to do because that's automatic. And see, that's what I saw oftentimes is that if you're if I'm put in those situations, and maybe this was some kind of my Marine Corps training, when a crisis happens, I get calm. It's the thing. I mean, we learn that under fire, the guys that got killed first were the guys that panicked and started running around and not standing there and assessing the situation and saying, what is my best response in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it meant duck and cover. Sometimes it meant get up out of the hole and start returning fire so that we make sure that we're protecting, our perimeter. I mean, it depends on what was happening. And I'll tell you, I credit the Marine Corps I criticize the Marine Corps for some things, but I credit them. The one thing they knew how to do is how to stress you out and help you learn how to stay focused in that moment and not get lost in the stress reaction. So I'm forever grateful for that.
Beautiful.
Marine Corps and fatherhood are probably both good at that.
If I could do that when Cece gets a splinter in her foot. They didn't teach me that one.
Well, there you go. But now we're getting a treatment plan. See, the next time Cece starts crying, I want the first voice you hear in your head just to say Marine.
That's right.
And then whatever comes next is going to be better.
That's right. That'll be it. All right. Well, listen, what we decided to do, and I'm really excited about this plan because my book, as you guys know, has been released. And thanks for being at the book release party. And Tom, thanks for all your wonderful comments. And
I met most of them.
I'm glad you did. It felt very hard. An incredible neat meeting evening for me in terms of, I call it a meeting.
Beautiful.
It was talk about letting yourself receive some things. That was like a heavy dose of being appreciated. And I appreciate that very much.
Remember that?
Shut up and receive.
Shut up and receive, man.
That was it, man. That was a night I was so filled with so much from that evening. And we're going to start walking through the book next week, and we're going to take the chapters on and we're going to discuss them and what's going on and hopefully extend some of the discussions because, you've discovered this when you write something, all of a sudden you realize, God, that would have been good to put in a book more. This curiosity thing. I would have loved to add that element to the book because it adds so much to discussion. But look, the initial feedback has been great. I'm very excited that we're going to do that next time. And so please turn in next time and spread the word.
Wonderful to have you back, Alan.
Thank you.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.